When I think back to where it all began, Honolulu, Hawaii, 1961, I wasn't born into privilege or power. My mother was a dreamer from Kansas, my father a student from Kenya. Two different worlds, two different stories, somehow meeting on an island in the Pacific. Maybe that's why I've always believed that our beginnings don't define us. Our choices do. Growing up, I didn't always feel like I belonged. I was a kid searching for meaning, for identity, for purpose. There were moments of doubt, moments when I wondered where I fit in this big, complicated world. But here's what I learned. The best way to not feel hopeless is to get up and do something. Don't wait for the perfect moment, because it never comes. It's built through action, through doing, through trying, even when you don't have all the answers. Change will not come if we wait for some other person or some other time. That's a lesson I had to learn early. Whether I was walking the streets of Honolulu, studying in Los Angeles, or making my way to New York for college, I began to understand that waiting for someone else to fix the world is just another form of giving up. We are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the change that we seek. When I decided to dedicate my life to public service, I didn't have fame or fortune. What I had was belief that if you're walking down the right path and you're willing to keep walking, eventually you'll make progress. It's not always easy. You stumble, you fail, you question yourself. But step by step, that path becomes purpose. And the truth is, our destiny is not written for us, but by us. Every choice, every effort, every act of courage, from a young man with questions to a leader with conviction. My journey was never about waiting for history to change. It was about becoming the one who would help write it. When I was a young man trying to find my way, I didn't have a clear map of where life would lead me. What I had were questions about who I was, where I belonged, and what difference I could make. I remember walking the streets of New York City, working my way through Columbia University, thinking about the kind of world I wanted to help build. I wasn't sure how to get there, but I knew one thing: giving up was never an option. That's when three simple words began to shape my mindset. Yes, we can. Not maybe, not someday, but yes, we can. There was a belief that ordinary people working together could create extraordinary change. I carried that belief from the classroom to the community streets of Chicago, where I saw families fighting to keep their neighborhoods alive, where I learned that real change doesn't come from speeches, it comes from service. But I also learned something else. You can't let your failures define you. You have to let them teach you. I didn't get every job I applied for. I didn't win every battle I fought. There were moments when the struggle felt endless. But failure has a funny way of revealing your strength, of teaching you what truly matters. We did not come to fear the future. We came here to shape it. That's what kept me going. Every setback was a lesson, every challenge a test of endurance. The future rewards those who press on, who keep believing even when the odds say no. And as I worked with families struggling to make ends meet, I began to see something deeper, that progress isn't just personal, it's collective. I believe in evolution, but I also believe when you spread the wealth around, it's good for everybody. Because real success isn't about how high one person climbs, it's about how many we lift along the way. And that belief, that unshakable faith in yes we can, became the compass guiding the rest of my journey. When I first walked into the neighborhoods of Chicago as a young community organizer, I didn't have much, no big title, no powerful connections, no blueprint for success. What I had was belief. Belief that if enough people came together with a shared purpose, we could move mountains. I saw that power in church basements, in small meetings filled with mothers and fathers who refused to give up on their communities. But I also learned that progress doesn't come overnight. Progress will come in fits and starts. It's not always a straight line. Some days you take 2 steps forward and 1 step back. There are victories that lift you up, and moments that test everything you stand for. But even when things move slowly, even when frustration sets in, you keep pushing. Because real change is built, not wished for. Making your mark on the world is hard. Supposed to be. The world doesn't bend easily. I remember those long nights sitting alone, wondering if the work we were doing was enough. But each time I saw a family get their heat turned back on, a school find new life, or a community gain hope, I knew it was worth it. A change is brought about because ordinary people do extraordinary things. not superheroes, not the powerful few, but everyday men and women who decide that standing still is no longer an option. That's what I witnessed, and that's what shaped me. And though we may not be able to stop all evil in the world, we can stop some of it. We can choose to make our corner of the world just a little better, a little kinder, a little more just. Those early years taught me that change isn't an idea, it's a responsibility. And that belief, that unbreakable faith in people, became the foundation for everything I would go on to do. When I look back on those early years, before the campaigns, before the crowds, I see a young man still trying to understand his place in the world. My journey started far from Washington, D.C., far from the halls of power. I was a kid raised by a single mother in Hawaii who taught me that the world is bigger than our own struggles. She believed in something simple, something powerful, that hope is the bedrock of this nation, the belief that our destiny is shared, that we rise and fall together. I carried that hope with me to New York, where life wasn't always easy. There were days when I questioned if I was on the right path, nights when loneliness felt heavy. But that's when I learned one of the most important lessons of all. Don't be afraid to ask questions, and don't be afraid to ask for help. Growth doesn't come from pretending to have all the answers. It comes from seeking truth and finding strength in others. When I later worked in the neighborhoods of Chicago, I saw what resilience really looked like. Families struggling, yet still believing. And I realized that the true test of the American ideal isn't whether we avoid failure, but whether we can recognize our failings and still rise together. That's what makes us who we are. Not our perfection, but our perseverance. And in a world that often feels divided, I've learned that the strongest weapon against hate is love. Love that refuses to give up. Love that listens. Love that fights for justice without losing compassion. Because empathy, that ability to step into someone else's shoes, to see through their eyes, is not a weakness. It's a quality of character that can change the world. Those years, before politics, before fame, they shaped my heart more than my resume. They taught me that hope is not naive, love is not soft, and empathy is not optional. They are the foundation of everything I've ever believed in and everything I've ever fought for. When I think back to my 20s, I remember a time filled with questions, not just about who I wanted to be, but what I wanted my life to mean. I wasn't chasing money or fame back then. In fact, focusing your life solely on making a buck, I realized, shows a certain poverty of ambition. I wanted something deeper. What purpose? That desire led me to the streets of Chicago working as a community organizer. The pay was low, the hours were long, and the results weren't always immediate. But every day, I met people who refused to give up. Single mothers fighting for safer neighborhoods, factory workers struggling to keep their jobs, families holding on to hope when everything seemed against them. Those moments taught me something priceless. Leadership isn't about position or title. You can't lead people if you don't love the people. But love alone isn't enough. Change requires more than righteous anger. It requires a plan, a program, and a community willing to work together. I saw that real progress came not from shouting the loudest, but from organizing, listening, and acting with compassion. It's important to make sure that we're talking with each other in a way that heals, not in a way that wounds. That's something I learned watching neighbors come together across divides. Not because they agreed on everything, but because they cared about something bigger than themselves. And in the face of impossible odds, I've always believed this. People who love their country can change it. That belief carried me through those early years, through the challenges, the doubts, and the moments I questioned whether any of it mattered. But every conversation, every small victory, every act of unity reminded me that it did. That even in the toughest corners of America, and that belief that love and purpose can overcome anything became the foundation for everything I would do next. When I think back to my early years before politics, the long days working in community centers, the quiet nights wrestling with my own doubts, I realize how much those moments shaped the way I see the world. I met people from every walk of life, different races, religions, and stories, And what struck me most was that no one is born hating another person. People learn to hate, and if they can learn to hate, then they can be taught to love. That truth stayed with me, because love, real, compassionate love, is the root of all change. In those Chicago neighborhoods, I didn't tell people to believe in me. I asked them to believe in themselves. We don't ask you to believe in our ability to bring change. We ask you to believe in yours. Because change doesn't start in Washington. It starts in your street, your home, your heart. I used to dream about the world I wanted to see. Fairer, kinder, more united. But I learned early that dreams alone aren't enough. Don't just dream about what you want to do. Go out and do it. Every great movement begins, not with talk, but with action. The truth is, the road ahead will always be long. Our climb will be steep. Progress doesn't happen overnight. It's earned step by step through perseverance, sacrifice, and faith. There were moments when I felt like giving up, moments when the challenges seemed bigger than my resolve. But I learned that the real test isn't whether you avoid failure. It's whether you let it harden you or teach you. Every setback in those years taught me something. Patience, humility, and resilience. I saw firsthand that the greatest power we have isn't in never falling, but in rising every time we do. Those lessons about love, action, and perseverance became my foundation long before I ever entered politics. And they still guide me every single day. When I look back at those early years, long before the presidency, before the speeches and the crowds, I remember a young man searching for meaning. I wasn't trying to be famous. I wasn't chasing power. I was trying to understand how one person could make a difference in a world that often seemed divided and uncertain. Working in Southside Chicago, I saw pain and poverty, but I also saw resilience and love. I learned something that became a foundation for everything I would ever stand for. If people can learn to hate, they can also learn to love. Love is not weakness. It's strength. It's what allows us to see past our differences, to build bridges instead of walls, to believe that we rise or fall as one nation, not as individuals, but as a community bound by shared purpose. Even in the hardest days, when the challenges seemed endless, I held on to something powerful: hope. Hope in the face of difficulty. That's what I came to call the audacity of hope. The courage to believe that tomorrow can be better, even when today feels impossible. We choose hope over fear because fear divides, but hope unites. Fear paralyzes, but hope moves us forward. And I learned something else that changed the way I saw my own life. It's only when you hitch your wagon to something larger than yourself that you realize your true potential. It's not about the title on your door or the money in your bank account. It's about what you give, what you build, and how you lift others as you climb. Once you're six, they were about people. They were about learning, failing, growing, and realizing that change doesn't start in Washington. It starts in us. It starts when we decide to care, to act, and to believe. Because no matter where you come from or what you've been through, you have the power to make a difference. That's what my journey taught me, and it's what I'll carry for the rest of my life. If this story inspired you, don't just move on, move with it. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and share this video with someone who still believes in hope. Together,